of you may know that the VegMap is something that gets updated over every couple of years. So we've had the 2009 update of the VegMap, and we had the 2012 update of the VegMap. But with the NBA coming up, we had quite a few changes that we tried to include in this version. So that's the 2017 version of the VegMap. And it pushed us to work harder and get a lot more done in the usual time frame that we have. So I'm going to tell you about all the general changes that have happened all across the map, and then Adriaan's going to focus in on the more interesting stuff that's the thicket. So that list is a list of all the areas that we have refined. So when I say updated, what I mean is we've got information that helps us refine the map so that it's a better reflection of the historical extent of vegetation in South Africa. So Andrew will tell you a bit later about the assessment, but we need that original historical extent for us to do an assessment. So one of the big areas that we've had done, updated, refined is the Namaqualand, West Coast and Bushmanland areas. It's too high for me to point, but it's up there. And those were mostly changes in the boundaries of those vegetation types. We had just two new vegetation types added. Then we had the fynbos, which was just small boundary edits again, and there was a little bit of edge matching that we had to do. So that's been fixed in the 2017 version. Forests was forests was an area of the VegMap where it captured the forests, but it was slightly rough. It wasn't capturing forests, the boundaries of the forest that well in some places. So we went through an exercise first to find out where we had existing information. So in Mpumalanga, we got new forest polygons from Mervyn, and KZN we had those updates in the 2012 version. But there was no new information ready at hand for Limpopo and for the Eastern Cape. So we had forest experts come in and train our team, and it was a desktop digitizing exercise, and we chopped up the provinces into blocks, and we went across the province going and trying to capture those forests and kicking out the forests that were not actually forest or were plantation. And so it's gone through quite a long review process, and we're hoping that we now have a better representation of the extent of forest. It's a little bit tricky because we can't do historical extent always. We did try. We've got some historical extent information from eThekwini, but yeah, I think it's a lot better than it used to. The next change that we have, which is quite a big change, is the wetlands. So all across the country, we went through the classification system of the VegMap, and there were about 12 types that were mapping wetland habitat. And so wetland habitat, meaning wetland communities, at a landscape scale vegetation map wasn't actually appropriate. So what we did is we took those units of those wetland types and we gave them to, Sandy has a wetland team that maps those habitats. So it makes more sense for them to be housed there, but we took the information from those wetland types and we merged them into the surrounding terrestrial vegetation types. Then we had the coastal edge, and we had an awesome coastal expert that went at 1 in 3,000 mapping the edge of the coastal vegetation types. And she mapped, we had 4 coastal vegetation types in the VegMap. We still have them, but the boundaries at where the dune veg or the forest veg stops and where those coastal types start is at a much more refined scale. Then lastly, we have the thicket biome changes, and it was quite a fun job and an interesting job because the thicket biome is not something that I'm necessarily familiar with, and so I learned a lot. But Adriaan's going to tell you a lot more about the details. But just to note, at the graph at the bottom, it was one of our biggest changes in the map by area and it was also one of the biggest impacts on the classification system for the VegMap. So usually we've had 1 or 2 new types added per year, but for this classification we went from, for the thicket biome alone, we went from 14 vegetation types to 42 vegetation types. And so, yeah, it's been a massive change to our classification system. But Adriaan will tell you a little bit more about that now.
Okay, so I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the step classification, but I'm just going to give you a very quick broad overview of basically what the step vegetation map was about and how it came about. So the step vegetation map was developed by Jan Vlok and Douglas Houston Brown. And it was spawned by a need for a conservation plan, a systematic conservation plan for the thicket biome. This vegetation map was developed specifically to inform that conservation planning program, the subtropical thicket ecosystem program. And it was basically a hierarchical classification of the thicket vegetation types. So it operated on 2 levels, basically at the top. So at the top is basically what we'll refer to as the structural units. So it's just basically the different structural types of thicket that you find. So they recognized what they call valley thicket, they recognized an arid thicket, and they recognized a Mosaic thicket. And then they also recognized mosaic vegetation types, which I'll get back to just now. So that was the one level that this map operated on. And then the second level was basically regional variations of this. So the regional variants were mostly, so you get 2 major regional variants, which is the mainland thickets, the inland stuff, and then the coastal or dune thickets. So the dune thickets, they recognized 4 regional types, and there were 10 regional types for the mainland thicket, and these were mostly associated with drainage basins. So there's variability between the thicket associated with drainage basins. And when you basically superimpose these 2 classifications, they ended up with 112 different thicket types. So that was a bit much for trying to incorporate into the VegMap. So what we did is we needed a slightly more concise and more comprehensive classification to incorporate into the VegMap updates for the thicket biome. So I went to spend some time with Jan Vlok in Oudtshoorn, and he guided us to basically lump some of these 112 thicket types together with compositionally and ecologically similar units. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is just a quick comparison of what we've come up with. At the top you have the 2012 thicket biome. At the bottom is the 2017 VegMap thicket biome. So as Anisha already mentioned, this was one of the most significant changes to the classification of the VegMap that we've had for the updates. So this update affected about 3% of the total VegMap mapping area. So that's not super impressive, but in terms of the classification of the types, we went from 14 thicket types up to 44 types, which now represents, so that 44 represents 10% of the total vegetation types in the mapping domain for the VegMap. So in that process, we also sort of stole a bit from the surrounding biomes by using that step classification. So in the updated classification, 75%, about 3/4 of what we have included, or what was included as thicket, is still thicket here. But we've also gained some ground from the succulent karoo, the Namaqualand, and also from the fynbos. So the biggest one was from the succulent karoo. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the changes. I obviously can't go through all of them, But yeah, just in summary, I'm going to show you some of the new concepts basically that we've introduced for this classification. So for us the solid thicket, we've basically introduced those structural types that I mentioned earlier. So just using this, the type of thicket that we are in now was previously recognized as Sunday's thicket. So we still have that recognized as Sunday's thicket, but now where this was all one type, we've split that up into those structural units. So we get Sunday's arid thicket, Sunday's valley thicket, and Sunday's Mosaic thicket. And this classification was introduced across the board for most of the solid thicket types throughout the mapping area. Towards the west, in some of the drier areas, we don't get the Mosaic variant, and towards the east, where it's a bit more wet, we don't get the arid thicket. So some of the regional types don't have all of these, but for the most part, they occur everywhere now. Oh, thanks. Okay. Another change that we've introduced now is, as I mentioned earlier, the mosaic type vegetations, or thicket vegetation types. So the mosaic type is basically just where the thicket intermingles with adjacent vegetation types, or typically where they occur where you have this boundary between the thicket biome and the adjacent biome. And it can be pretty much anything. So mostly it forms with forest, fane moss, grassland, Namaqualand, succulent karoo, and also savanna types. And typically you'll find that the thicket here occurs as bush clumps in this matrix of the other vegetation type. And then we also have the Bornveld, which is a similar type of concept, but in Bornveld you have the thicket clumps that occur in a vegetation type that has a sort of mixed affinity. So it can have components of fane moss, of grassland, and of caroid affinity, all within the same vegetation. Okay. Oh, sorry. Can you actually go back? I just want to point this out on the map again. So just using that same area where we had basically this solid Sunday's thicket previously, we now have. So this is a new mosaic vegetation type that we've introduced. So this used to be the solid thicket, or this is still recognized as solid thicket, but now we have these different mosaics that have been introduced. So this is where the thicket basically intermingles with adjacent vegetation types. Okay, just some examples just to show you what I'm talking about. So in the background, this is the what we call the mother ball caroid thicket. In the background, you see the typical thicket vegetation, and then this is the matrix in which it occurs, which is like a grassy caroid type of vegetation. Okay, the next one. And this is a Bornveld type, and this one was actually recognized in the previous, the 2012, and also the initial VegMap classifications. So this was also sort of just a bit of a catalyst for us trying to introduce some more of these mosaic type of vegetation, since it had already actually been recognized in the initial vegetation map. So this is now grass-ridge Bornveld, which is a mixture of thicket, as you can see in the background, and then the matrix is a mixture of fane moss and grassland and caroid. So yeah, the mosaic types that we've introduced now, we have a total of 17 of them, and that's about 40% of those 44 new units that we introduced. So the mosaics form quite a substantial proportion of the new classification. Okay. Another new concept that we've introduced is the dune thicket mosaics. So previously there weren't any dune thicket mosaics or dune thickets recognized in the VegMap. We had some of these areas were previously classified as azonal Strandveld units, and in some areas they were even put in with the fane moss biome. So we've expanded this to now include, or we've expanded the thicket biome concept to now include some of these areas. So they stretch pretty much from around the Still Bay area, west towards the Kai mouth. And obviously they are associated with the dunes. And in the west, so between the Sundays River and Still Bay area, these thickets typically form mosaics with fynbos vegetation on the dunes. And westward of the Sundays River up to the Kai mouth, eastward, they form mosaics with grassland vegetation. So we now have a total of 5 thicket mosaic units associated with the dunes. And just some examples. This is from Cape St. Francis. This is the type area for this St. Francis dune thicket. And you can see this is like a bit of a grassy dune fynbos type of mosaic with the typical thicket clump occurring in it. And this is a bit further west, Hartenbos Strandveld. Again, you can see this thicket occurring in this mosaic of fynbos. Right, so we've also included Guariveld. So Guariveld was a concept that had also been included in VegMap 2012, but it was split between different biomes. So in the west, or these 2 units actually were included with the succulent karoo, and this unit was included with Namaqualand. So it was a concept that was split between 2 biomes, and it actually originated from Jan Vlok and Douglas Houston Brown's thicket mapping exercise. So originally these units were conceived as thicket types. So what we've done is we've basically taken them out of the succulent karoo and succulent karoo and Namaqualand biomes and placed them back into the thicket biome. And we've also just expanded on one of these units. This used to be the Lower Karoo Guariveld. You can see this pink unit on this side. We've expanded some of that also just to include areas that was identified as Guariveld in the STEP mapping project. And we've therefore now given it a new type name, which is now Eastern Cape. We've also removed some units that we thought would be better placed in a different biome. So what was previously called the Albany Coastal Belt, which was included in the thicket biome, we've now basically moved out of that and into the savanna biome. So as you can see, there's been a bit of change in terms of coverage for what we now call the southeastern coastal thornveld. And it's basically just because we had some areas that we felt fitted better with some of the mosaic types that we identified in this area. So particularly where the thicket forms mosaics with the savanna. Okay, so what this also means is that the savanna biome, which has up to now basically extended into this area, has been expanded westwards down to St. Francis Bay area. Okay, so yeah, up to now we still have some work to do to get this classification wrapped up. We've sorted out all the spatial aspects of the mapping exercise, and what we're busy with now is coming up with the descriptions for all of these units, the 44 thicket units that we have identified. So I'm sure most of you will be familiar with these descriptions that go into the vegetation map, the book for the VegMap. So that's what we're working on now. But we're sort of also trying to move away from this lengthy list of species and trying to incorporate a community or like a plant community concept into that, rather focusing on plant community description rather than lengthy lists of plant species associated with each of these units. Okay, so what we also quite keen on is to get photos of all of these units. So you guys are more than welcome to contribute. So Anisha set up a project. I don't know if any of you are familiar with iNaturalist, or something. It's similar to what iSpot is, so that people might also be familiar with iSpot. But Sandy sort of decided to rather go with iNaturalist, to use this as the sort of online biodiversity platform. So this is the URL for the project that Anisha set up for us, and you can basically submit photos of any of the units. So if you guys have photos of thicket types that you would like to submit, please feel free to log on to that, and you can submit your photos to this project. There's a tag. I'm not sure what the tag is though. Anisha? Sorry. So for the field that you have to put in, is it just the name for the?
Oh, so there's a drop down list that gives you options and you can pick which vegetation type.
Okay. All right. So when you upload your photo, then there'll be a field that you just need to put in the name for the vegetation type. And also because iNaturalist doesn't work with vegetation types, you will have to provide an identification for something in the photo. So typically it'll be the dominant plant in that community is a good way to go. So for this example, Anisha submitted a photo of one of the fynbos types, but because iNaturalist doesn't recognize names for those fynbos types, she's identified this as the Cape Everlasting, just to have it on the system. Right. That should be our last one. Okay, so yeah, that was just the brief overview of what we've been up to for this update, and we have a lot of people to thank for this. Obviously, Jan Vlok, Douglas Houston Brown, for coming up with the initial step map for the Thicket Biome, which this has relied heavily on, and even the 2012 and former thicket classifications relied heavily on the work that they produced. Richard Cowling, Alistair Potts from Nelson Mandela University guided us a lot in making some decisions for the update, and as did Andrew Skoner and Tony Ribello from Sandy. Alright, so thank you very much.